9:30. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here this morning and making the effort to get to the roads. The main roads are pretty good in most cases, but some of those side roads and parking lots are extremely treacherous. So, especially those of you who made the trip from, Marshfield or the far ends of the county. I'm sure that was quite a commitment to get here. So thank you for that. That being said, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the February meeting of the Wood County Board of Supervisors. I would ask that the clerk please take the roll. I'm one who needs to sign in.
Supervisor Plummer, please.
We need Supervisor Hokamp and Zerflu yet to sign in.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of networking to do this morning.
If you believe that.
Just say good morning.
I don't.
All right, now that Supervisor Zerflu has done networking, we've got everybody signed in, and at this time I would call on Supervisor Lightnum to please come forward for the invocation. I'd ask the body to please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Getting a red dot on that, so I'll use my school teacher voice. Maybe I'll try one more time.
It's on, Bill.
Okay. Is it on?
Sounds like it.
Well, good morning. Good icy morning. I can't begin to tell you how we school teachers used to like the snow days and the ice days. We had more fun than the kids. If you'd please join with me for a word of prayer. Lord, on this day after President's Day, realizing that high office has passed us all in attendance by, let us rededicate ourselves to our charge here, to help our citizens be adjudicated fairly, to police our communities equitably, to finance child support, help for troubled and needy families, to provide elder care and care for those mentally infirm or addicted, to manage emergencies and provide our citizenry with parks and forests, to provide better and safer infrastructure, to conserve and protect our land and water resources, to provide services for our veterans who have served us, and to pay for all of this in a fiscally sound manner. Guide us steadfastly, Lord, as we seek to maintain and improve these services. This we ask in the name and for the glory of the great provider. Amen.
Amen. Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and thank you, Supervisor Lightnum. Why don't I get to this first, I guess. We'll deal with the minutes from the previous session. I would entertain a motion to approve the place on file by Hinkle, second by Hamilton. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by aye. Aye. And opposed, and that motion carries. We have no excusals today. We have no resignations today. We have no appointments or reappointments today. Do we have any public comment today? Any public comment? Or any public comment? Doesn't appear to be any. And we have no acknowledgements and recognitions. I guess real quickly, I was got here about half an hour early this morning. I usually try to get up here and get a little bit prepared. At that point in time, we had a conference call with the Wisconsin Counties Association in regard to an issue that's coming up pretty quick, and that's the closing of Lincoln Hills and the possible construction of regional facilities all around. And it's an extremely aggressive timeline, and it will affect counties. We have another conference call today at 4 o'clock, but we're on the phone with the WCA Executive Committee and Speaker Voss's office. So I think we see that coming. It's something that we're going to probably have to make our best effort to not have any additional county costs involved, but it's something that is going to happen. Lincoln Hills is going to close, and where we fit into that regional facility plan is yet to be determined. So So just kind of a heads up, you might want to follow that on Wheeler Report or West Politics or one of the other places where we get that news. Today we do have one special order of business, the Land and Water Conservation Department new initiatives by Sherry Musher-Fennig. That'll happen right after their minutes. We'll get to those shortly. So that's kind of my announcements, and I guess we'll get into the packet. Referrals for February, we have none. Although the legislature is extremely busy trying to kind of get everything done here in the last couple of days down in Madison. Page 7 of your packet, the Executive Committee meeting minutes of Tuesday, December 19th. Page 8, meeting from Tuesday, January 16th. Pages 9 through 12, Tuesday, February 6th, meeting of the Executive Committee. And I have a couple of hands up. Supervisor Lightman first.
Yep.
Microphone difficulties this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under public comments on page 9, it says, Clendening stated he requested a copy of Carlson-Detman documents from Warren Craft and was told that he could not have them because they were in draft form and not available. I think this is before my time on the county board, but wasn't Carlson-Detman 5 years ago? I mean, this strikes me actually as ridiculous. He couldn't have something that was in draft form. It seems to me that when a county supervisor asks for documentation on anything, that only corporate counsel should have authority to deny access, and I would think only if that violates state law. I mean, the people's representatives must have access to documentation. I can't see this any other way unless there's something I'm reading wrong here. If you look at page 36, can I just jump ahead because it reflects on page 9? Or
Sure.
Okay, right at the top of the page. Prior to his departure, Warren secured wage plans. He secured wage plans and related data for comparable entities. And yet, Supervisor Clendening can't have them? I just don't understand that. In fact, if I may, unless I need to be corrected on this, I would make a motion from the floor if that's acceptable.
Well, let me just clarify. Yeah, you can always make a motion from the floor, but my question is this. Carlson-Detman did a wage study. They did it 5 or 6 years ago, and that was the wage plan that we implemented. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, and that is available, and it's available to everybody, and has been. The question I had is, are you referring to a project, some work documents that a department head, in this case an HR director, was working on, that in that process didn't want to share those? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
So this came before the executive committee on Tuesday, February 6th. And I must be reading it wrong, but why can a supervisor not have access to something that a county employee has access to? I don't get it.
I think it's probably work on Supervisor Wagner.
Yeah, I think you're confusing a couple things. We signed a contract with Carlson-Detman to do an update of the market values of our plan. The way the plan works is the median is set at market value, and basically that needs to be reviewed every 4, 5, 6 years, somewhere in that range, to determine if we've let it slip and whether or not our employees are being compensated at market rate. We signed that contract with them. They were in the process of doing it. They had submitted some work papers to Warren initially, and to see if they were if Warren felt they were on the right track, if they were fulfilling the tenets of the contract. And he said yes, they were, and they said okay, we'll proceed with finalizing the report. The copy of that report was emailed out to the executive committee yesterday. We received it yesterday. As it became a public document and as we received it, it was sent to the executive committee for their review. We will review it at our March meeting. We will make recommendations to the county board, and the county board will have their way with the plan when it comes through. What we did not have the completed document in our hands when Mr. Clendenning asked for it. We had it only yesterday.
So if I ask Supervisor Clendenning if he has access to that draft document now,
He's
the
got it.
answer would be no.
No, he has it. It was mailed to him yesterday.
Yes.
I guess, Supervisor, what I'm trying to clarify is
What draft
that
document?
any document at some point is available to every supervisor. I think what we're looking at is a Pandora's box, that anytime a department head has any work paper on their desk, any piece of paper that they've written on that you'd like a supervisor to have access to. And I'm not sure that's a slippery slope we want to go down, no matter what department it is, no matter what they're doing. You know, if I start writing on here and you walk in and say, I want that paper, I don't know that we as a body, I won't comment if we should or shouldn't. I'll just say, I'm not sure exactly where you're going with the request. Is that what you're looking for?
What work paper are you talking about? I don't understand.
Because I wasn't in attendance at that committee meeting, I'm reading one paragraph here and I'm seeing something I am vehemently opposed to. I think our county supervisors should have access in draft form or whatever to even notes. So anyway,
Okay, let me one second. I will continue to recognize you, Supervisor Leitner, but Peter Kastenholz is back here just waiting to weigh in on this one.
Thanks. Get that venom out I was talking about earlier. Right? So we're talking about the open or public records law, and the way the public records law operates, and that's where I want to start with at least, is that if there's a document that's in draft form, that is not a record, and so it is not available to the public. That doesn't mean it could or should or shouldn't be shared with other people, but as soon as you start sharing it, then you lose that protection that it's just a draft. And so that's a reason why not to share it, or else it's going to lose that. And then it's available to everybody. So that's the way the open records or public records law works. When it comes, and you don't have to respond immediately either. You have to respond within a reasonable time, and according to the AG's office, if it's more than 10 days, that's probably not reasonable unless there's some circumstances you can identify that support that. When it comes to dealing with the county board of supervisors and our bosses, that's a touchy situation because our bosses don't always think alike. And so when one asks for information and another doesn't want it handed out, or your committee doesn't necessarily want it or expect it handed out, then that puts a department head in a bit of a bind. And so it is appropriate when you have these concerns to involve the committee if you can, sure, so we're not, as department heads, put in a pickle. With respect to the issue that you're speaking of, I don't think that Supervisor Clendenning had access to that until yesterday, but I think that as of yesterday, he and the rest of the executive committee were all provided that same documentation. That's what I'm aware of. Whether there's anything additional to that or not, I'm not, but I suppose Supervisor Clendenning ought to be able to answer that. That's
Yeah,
all.
only to clarify that point, I never saw a copy of this until yesterday. All right, now back to you, Supervisor Leitner. Sorry, I just thought we'd get that little clarification.
okay, so granted I don't understand, I still feel strongly about this. I'm going to make a motion from the floor. It will probably die for lack of second, but still going to do this. That motion being that all county board of supervisors have access to all documentation that any county employee, department head has access to, and parenthetically in any format. Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor. Corporate Counsel, Counsel. She'll take the microphone again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That doesn't work. statutes that prohibit us from actually sharing information, including with county board supervisors, when it comes to confidential information. The departments that you oversee, like Human Services, the DA's office, just a whole lot of them. My office have all sorts of confidential information that you folks just can't have access to. Not to be rude, but if that information pertains to you, you wouldn't want other supervisors to have access to it necessarily either. So you could make a motion along these lines, but it wouldn't be that broad. It would have to be somewhat more curtailed, something like unless you have the right to access information irrespective of the open records law, subject to other legal restrictions and other caveats and so on, as I'm going to contemplate and think of. That part at the end, which is kind of supposed to be humorous. So there are limits to this, so you could make a motion along those lines, but I think as soon as you do, and if you pass something like that, I really think it's, from a procedural standpoint, a bad idea, because it prevents us as department heads from working on things and learning things and working with other staff and other department heads that aren't fully vetted out. And that's why we're talking about it, checking about it, and then it comes out and it's like, well, this is what, for instance, Kastenholz had suggested. Well, I suggested it to think about it, not to be a policy or something like that. And so I think you're putting us in a pickle here. One more, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I think that you're better off taking these on a case-by-case basis. And if, for instance, some department head won't share something with you, and you bring it to me or you bring it to the oversight committee and say, they botched up on this, Lauren botched up on this, or Kim botched up, or Peter botched up on it, and maybe we did. And if we did, then we should be sanctioned and so on, and deal with it probably on a case-by-case basis as opposed to trying to make some sort of broad policy that we're going to be spending all our time making exceptions to. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
With that being said, Supervisor, are you going to continue with the motion, or do you want to take some time to reconsider?
Suppose I should take time to reconsider. If the terminology were statutorily with appropriate redacted documentation, then could Supervisor have it? If everything were redacted that our eyes shouldn't see?
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying not to talk from up here. Go ahead.
Thank you. Or I guess the wheels are going slower today, which means they're practically in reverse. If things were redacted,
I can only imagine the amount of time it would take to redact everything in every work paper that was ever sitting on anybody's desk in the county. And I guess, obviously, we will recognize your motion if you'd like to continue to do that, Bill, but I think at some point, if you really want a policy that relates to this, it probably should go through committee and really be looked at.
and I think that's a good point, and I think you had a problem here, and you're trying to address it, and that's exactly what you should be doing. I just think this is still a heavy-handed approach in addressing it, and if we spend more time in thinking about it, we can probably do a better job of addressing that problem in a more precise way, as opposed to a broad way that's going to be more problematic than this problem is you're addressing.
Supervisor Lightman.
Okay, so one of my fellow supervisors just turned around and said, send it to a committee. I think I know which committee that would go to. I will withdraw my motion. I don't want to hold the county board up any longer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Supervisor, I think we understand the drift to where you're going, and I think they can certainly work on that. Supervisor Clinton, you had your hand.
I did raise my hand for page 12, but I'll answer some of those questions. I did ask for this, and before I asked for this, did not know it was a draft, and from what I found out, it don't make any difference and it's a draft. Supervisor Wagner says we asked for that, and we did. We being the executive committee. When I found out that that report was received from Carl Detman, I went to Peter first and said, can I get a copy of that? Not knowing draft or what it was. He said, certainly. He says, you're a member of the county board. This is what the committee asked for. You can get a copy of that. So I went to Warren, and he said, in an unpleasant way, no, you can't get it. And I says, why? Well, it's in draft form, and so said I can't give it to you. Fine, he's not here to defend himself, but that's it. So, last Friday, I asked the HR intern director if I could have a copy of that. And I was told that she has a little bit more to do on it, that Monday I would get a copy of that. And I suppose it went on from there, and I did get a copy of it. I got a copy of it after somebody had added things to it. I wanted a copy of what Carl and Detman sent me, and I still think to this day I had a right to get that copy. So that's where that goes. And yes, I do have a copy, and I and the rest of the people that got a copy of that, there was no indications that we can't pass it on, but we should be discreet in what we do with this. I don't understand that. I really don't. I don't know why everybody don't have a copy of that. And I'll point that out on page 12 here, where we don't have a copy of something. So that's to that. Okay. So can I go to page 12? Sure. Okay. Page 12, you'll note that there's a motion by Rosar, seconded by Primmel, to approve the educational reinforcement policy as presented. I would like to know how many county board supervisors know what policy was presented and what did the executive board vote on. I handed out a copy on your desk to each one of you. And I know this is going to skip around, but if you would skip back to page 170, the last page in our packet, this is where this all come about, the educational reimbursement. And you'll see that there was a public meeting of the department heads. And in that public meeting of the department heads, there was a question, and I believe it was put by Peter Casanos, who's the department head, and saying that, okay, we're here to determine something. Do we need this educational reimbursement plan for just continuing education or for higher education? And the conversation went on, and one of the department heads got up and started the conversation by saying, I don't believe that the taxpayers should be paying for college education and degrees with taxpayers' money. And then it went. Then it finally went to a vote, and the vote, as you'll see on page 170, was 15-5. And the executive board at this meeting on the 6th went ahead and adopted, I believe, that policy that was in the executive committee's report or even furnished to that department head meeting.
Bill, just to clarify, the committee can't adopt.
Well, they made a motion to do that.
Put it into resolution form at some point.
So okay. But this is not in a resolution form.
It will be at some point.
I would dare say, and I've asked this question many times, and this is a way, if nobody would say anything and this would go through, I would say that I would learn a month from now, why didn't you say something at the county board? Right, you know, if you saw the motion there, we're going to adopt the policy. That policy that was distributed on December 2nd. I'm going to make a motion that I think this policy should go to a different committee. And I think it should go to the Health and Human Services Committee to study this policy, to the fact that they are the ones that were challenged to have such a meeting. And I don't think, in this motion, I don't think the executive committee cares what went on at that meeting. They're going to have They're going to try to get the policy that was issued on December 12th. So my motion is that this be referred to the Health and Human Services Committee for presentation to the county board.
All right, let me just back up procedurally. Committees often take action and ask that it be put into a form of a resolution and come before this full board to be debated and voted on. We're in that process. We happen to be at the end of the year. I would have assumed that might have been in this packet, but we're at the end of the year with financials. We're working short in that department. It wasn't at the very top of the priority list for this month, so it's going to be in next month's packet. Regardless of what committee it comes out of or debates it, or an individual themselves, it still is likely to come to the board floor in some form. So I guess the point of procedure, you can ask another committee to look at it, but the executive committee is already going to have this as a resolution. If the Human Services Committee wants to co-sponsor it, great. If they don't, I guess that's part of it too. But just for informational purposes, this was discussed there. The committee, as a group, voted to forward this on, to have the resolution eventually drafted and brought to the board floor, where it would be discussed by everybody, and then there'd be an up or down vote. And we're just not to that point in the process yet. So you can ask a committee, Supervisor Clendenning, to look at it, to take it up as an issue on their agenda, but it's already done at this level, and that resolution is being drafted. So, Supervisor
Yes, if I
Clendenning.
don't get a second to the motion, I guess they trust you.
Yeah, Supervisor Wagner.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the entire policy handbook was adopted by a resolution here, and that basically, and that there's some confusion as to whether or not the executive committee was ever given the authority to make modifications to it without the approval of the full board. To be on the safe side, I am recommending that a resolution be prepared and brought to the full board so that it can be debated openly on the board floor, and I hope to have that available for March.
Supervisor Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're talking about the policy.
Yes, sir.
I'm talking about the handbook. That's what you're talking about. The entire handbook is going to come before this committee? Well, that's confusing to me, because I think that's just what you said. And because it's been discussed whether this is a policy that should be in the handbook or a rule on furthering education.
Just policy on education.
Thank you.
Which in effect becomes an addendum to the personnel policy handbook. It's just an additional addendum. We've had several of those over the years. It becomes part of that policy. All right, is there further discussion on page 12?
No.
No second? Okay. All right, we move to page 13, the ad hoc property committee minutes of Tuesday, February 6th. Page 14 also. Page 15, comments from the county clerk for the February executive committee meeting, or to the executive committee meeting. Monthly letter of comments from maintenance, 16. Safety and risk management, 17. Information technology from January, pages 18 through 20. This is thick because there's a lot of pages in here, a lot of reports, but the letter of comments from the finance department begins on 21, and with all the reports runs through page 32. Are there any comments on that? And then page 33 and 34 deal with the carryover funds policy, in other words, non-lapsing funds and how that would be handled going forward. That's 33 and 34. Pages 35 to 39, monthly letter of comments from Human Resources, 35 through 39. From the Treasurer's Office on 40 and 41. Some additional information that regarded that remodeling. That's a resolution in here that I can tell you right now is going to have a motion to refer to committee, but that is some additional information on that. And then that brings me to page 43, 44, 45, and 46. I'm going to, with your permission, I'd like to handle it this way. the resolution on page 44 to amend the treasurer's budget for additional expenditures and spend basically $100,000 to remodel that offices is going to get referred back to committee. And so I'd like to take that separately and handle it in that regard, and then do the other three in a single motion. Is that okay with everybody? If we do that in that direction? So page 44, Supervisor Roser.
So my only comment would be is that we know why it's going back to committee, okay?
Yeah, we'll get to that. Thank you. Let me bring that report. All right, so let's go to page 44 in your packet. And that is the motion to amend the treasurer's budget.
Well, since we're doing that, we have to make it. So this will be resolution 18-2-1 to amend the 2018 treasurer's budget for additional expenditures that were unanticipated during the original budget process. Fiscal note, no cost to Wood County. The adjustment to the budget totals $100,000.
Okay, a motion by Hamilton and a second by Bride. Discussion, Supervisor Wagner.
Yes, I was the one who asked that this be re-referred to committee, and I talked to Heather about it too. And the reason that I'm asking for it, Don, is that basically this is sort of unusual in the sense that there were these unanticipated revenues, I think 195,000. And basically what they're saying is, okay, we're going to sequester $100,000 and put it for remodeling of our office. I have not seen, well, I don't know if it ever made it to CIP. I've been told that Heather has actually requested this for a couple of years, but it didn't make it in there. But the other thing was, it was a big number. It was $100,000. What I'm wanting to do is follow a process. You notice we talked about a policy on non-lapsing funds and how to carry over funds from one to another, and what to do with surplus funds and things of that nature. Basically, what I want to do is follow some sort of a protocol or procedure so that there is a trail of the money, and that the county board is voting on, when they vote on this, they're voting on something that's been segregated and it'll be to be put in a separate fund. For instance, what's happened now is the whole $195,000 is sitting in the general fund, or it should be by this point, I think. And basically, what we want to do is say, okay, Heather, here is the amount that you need, and she's got new estimates, I understand, too, that are substantially less than $100,000 that was put in there. But what we're going to do, Heather, is we're going to transfer the amount that you need, plus a contingency of some sort, into the building fund, into Ruben's account, and let Ruben manage that account. And let him manage. Now, what happens is, if at the end of the year she hasn't spent all that money, but the project's not completed, it's still available to her under the non-lapsing fund policy, right? So now it's okay. It's fine. Everything's followed. There's a paper trail. Everybody knows where the money went, how far it went, and where it's going to go when it's done. And first of all, let me reiterate publicly that I do have a great deal of trust in Heather. I do. And I understand we trust her with millions and millions of dollars every year. And the comment from anybody that she would end up with $30,000 left over, which she'd put in some kind of a slush fund, I don't buy, okay? I trust Heather, and I know that she wouldn't do that kind of thing. But I do want a process, I do want a paper trail, and for that reason, I move that we refer this back to exec to follow the paper so that we make sure that the money is segregated, put in Ruben's account for Heather's project, and be used exclusively for Heather's project. I made that as a motion. So.
You have a motion to refer, I have a second by Hinkle. Do I have discussion on that? Do I have discussion? Supervisor Clendenin.
You know, this was a unanimous decision on the executive committee to go ahead and do this. And I, for one, and some other people on this county board get accused of walking quorums. When I walked into the courthouse the other day, and two supervisors come up to me and say, oh, that resolution, we're going to pull that. And my thing is we stop pulling resolutions. They first have to come before they can be pulled. So no chairman or supervisor of a committee can just say to the clerk, I don't want that resolution in the package, although it's on the agenda to be discussed. And here, I understand there's some people about carrying over funds and things like this. But I have to apologize, and I say this, I have to apologize for Heather for making the motion to do this. I've been criticized by people for doing that. You know, that's why this thing is going to lose, because you made the motion. And somehow I believe it, and I really do. So I'm voting no on this, and I think we should go ahead. She's got new figures right here. Go ahead and do that. If you would take a walk down in her office, she was one of those that went over to the River Block building and got used furniture and put it in that space and for the treasurer's office. And it's not nice to see 2x4s on the floor holding up a desk and other things to hold it up. I think that needs it. I think she's got new figures. I am opposed to doing this. Thank you.
May I just make a comment? Or just something about this gavel? My only take on this is sometimes we do things and then you have time to reflect on, you know, a motion that was made, and this didn't follow a process. And my biggest problem with this is, what do we even consider excess revenue or unanticipated revenue? You know, we had a history in this county, I go back a lot of years, where we had department heads who would always under budget revenue, and then go, hey, look, I got extra revenue, even though they were way upside down in their budget. So, you know, this came back to just the thought process that we need to really look at what that means. We have to follow the process. We've done it in every other department. I agree with Supervisor Clendenning. That office is probably in greater need of remodeling than any other office in the courthouse. We will work on that as quickly as possible when we get those new numbers. But to do this in some semblance of order, that was the reason for this. All right, so we have a motion to refer. We have a second. We have further discussion. Supervisor Serflu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not being the sharpest pencil in the case, I still haven't heard it in plain, simple language. This work will be done. And then I think I heard the Vice Chair state that if it's not done by the end of the year, it will be done in the first part of next year. When you look at the resolution, and I think it's the second whereas, the furniture in the office is causing damage to computer equipment and preventing the department from following through with its mission, and then it states the mission. And then Supervisor Clendenning just mentioned about a 2x4 holding up a desk. I personally would like to see this done ASAP. This work should be on the road. Does the executive committee approve the new figures then?
I haven't seen them.
I haven't, Heather showed them to me, but they haven't presented formally.
But the executive committee would have done, will be doing that?
We had an answer. To move through the process, Supervisor, you know, when you see a number float like 100,000, that's pretty ironic that that would be an exact figure. Or even close, you know, a number got floated out there. We realized, I think this whole board realizes that they walk on this place, that that's a priority. And other measures have been taken to make sure that we aren't having any static electricity issues with the computer systems.
I will support this, but with the caveat this work better be done ASAP. And if not, I will find a pencil sharpener and sharpen myself up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Anybody else? Supervisor Wagner.
I just wanted to assure, the reason I said if it wasn't done this year to be carried over was as an example of what would happen if we put it in a segregated fund so that it was earmarked specifically for that project. That's the only reason. I fully anticipated it being done this year.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer. We have a second. We are in the discussion process. Any further discussion? I'm going to try this by voice vote. All in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed?
Yes.
No.
2 opposed. Supervisor 3. Supervisor Pollack, Supervisor Clendenning, and I think I have a third one.
I know.
Yeah,
Supervisor Bryan, and 3 opposed. So noted. All right, so that'll go back to where it needs to go. All right, we have 3 resolutions, all deal with the amendment to the budget, simple amendments that we typically do. We'll take all 3 of these together without objection. Do you want to say anything, Mike, or you're just good to that? I'm going to have the supervisor, I'll have the clerk please read those, and then I will go to you for the motion.
Okay, we're on page 43, item 1-1. This will be numbered Resolution 18-2-2 to amend the 2017 budget for the Community Development Block Grant function for additional expenditures not anticipated during the original budget process. Fiscal note, no additional cost to Wood County. The source of the funding is from assigned fund balance. The adjustment to the budget totals $6,500. Now we are on page 45, which is item 1-3, will be numbered Resolution 18-2-3.
If I may, ma'am, that's $65,000.
$65,000, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So this is Resolution 18-2-3, to amend the 2017 budget for the Humane Officer for the purpose of moving the budget year from a fiscal year to a calendar year budget. Fiscal note, to transfer $4,000 from available balance and contingency to the Humane Officer. At the time of this request, the funds available in contingency are $291,217. The adjustment to the budget totals $4,000. Next resolution is 18-2-4 to amend the 2017 budget of Sheriff Electronic Monitoring for additional expenditures that were not anticipated during the original budget process. Fiscal note, no additional cost to Wood County. The source of the funding is the transfer to general fund balance. The adjustment to the budget totals $7,000.
And you heard the reading of those resolutions. I have a motion by Supervisor Fire, and I have a second by Supervisor, who do I have up here? Probably, I think Rosa was second there. Any discussion on any of these? Any discussion? All in favor? No, go to the board. I'm moving ahead of myself here. We're voting on the board here. Please vote.
There he goes.
Thank you. Those resolutions pass unanimously. Now we'll get back to kind of doing this the regular manner. Page 47 in your packet. I don't know, we're about the 5th resolution, I think, maybe, from the Executive Committee.
Okay, this will be Resolution 18-2-5 to accept offer of sale of tax deeded property. Offered amount of $200 minus real estate taxes, special assessments for a gain or loss of $0.
Motion by Clendenning, second by Hamilton. Any discussion? For a second, please vote. Resolution passed unanimously. Page 48 in your packet.
This will be Resolution 18-2-6 to authorize out-of-state training and travel for the Deputy Finance Director. Fiscal note, $2,200 for travel expenses and registration fee.
A motion by Zerflu and a second by Fisher. Any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion? Supervisor Roser?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to make a comment because it goes back to what Supervisor Clendenning was talking about continuing education and higher education and the difference. The Executive Committee certainly was supportive of this continuing education, but I assume that this individual will get some kind of a certificate or except like we did with our simple little thing that we got, and that person could use that for another job, you know? So we're basically having a dual purpose here where we give somebody continuing education, but they could take that certificate and say, look, I've got this education now, and go get another job with it. So we always always have to weigh how we're going to invest our money in our employees, because whatever we help them invest in is really higher education in addition to continuing education that could be used. And I think that's a good thing. So, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Please vote. That resolution passed unanimously. The only thing that concerned me was belittling my little certificate that I worked so hard to earn. Now, this is when I go home and get framed. I think I got kicked out of the system 2 or 3 times trying to do this on my iPad before I had to do it on my computer.
Repetition is the mother of learning.
Second thing I ever did with a computer that actually worked. Okay, page 49 in your packet, resolution regarding the proposed tower at UW-Marshfield.
This will be Resolution 18-2-7 to join with the City of Marshfield in approving a contract authorizing the placement of a communications tower on the UW-Marshfield Wood County campus by a private entity, with the revenues generated going to the UW-Marshfield Wood County Commission. Fiscal note, the City of Marshfield and Wood County jointly own the UW-Marshfield Wood County campus in Marshfield and fund the maintenance of the property via a commission. The revenues generated through the communications tower would go to the commission and thereby reduce the dependency of the commission on funding by the county and city.
Okay, you've heard the reading of the resolution. I have a motion by Fire, a second by Bry. There's also, just for your information, pages 50 to 72 of the documentation and copies of the agreement itself, so the ground lease. So if you have questions and they weren't answered in there, we're at the discussion portion of this resolution. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? All right, seeing none, please vote. Resolution passed 18-1. The other thing I just want to mention here is this took a lot of cooperative effort between the City of Marshfield, the County of Wood, and UW-Marshfield Wood County up there, all of those involved in this. So I want to thank everybody for their cooperation. These documents were traded back and forth many, many times to get to this point. Page 73, another resolution.
This will be Resolution 18-2-8. to approve the continuation of the self-insured workers' compensation program for the County of Wood in compliance with Wisconsin Administrative Code DWD 80.63 sub 3. Fiscal note, the general assessment rate for self-insured employers is prorated and assessed as a percentage of the state of Wisconsin workers' compensation division costs compared to insurers' claim costs. Source of money is budget.
Okay. Motion by Hamilton, second by Hinkle. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Again, that resolution passed 19-0. Page 74 in your packet, minutes of the Health and Human Services Committee dated January 25th, 74 and 75. Minutes of the Veterans Service Commission on 76. Veteran Service Officers Report on 77 and 78. Monthly report from the Health Department on 79, 80, and 81. Supervisor Clendenin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to commend the Health Department for that issue. I see it in the paper about going to these restaurants. I mean, my neighbors are old. They go to the meal site and get together and go to different places. And it's funny to hear that, well, I'll never go to that place again. They don't wash this and they don't wash that. I think it's a very effective thing that they do. And it's good to see that. You know, I'm concerned about clean water, you know, and I would like to know, you know, when that comes around, who does not have the good water, who does not have the clean facilities. I appreciate that being in the newspaper, and a good job they do. I guess they do such a good job, they even do it for Adams County. Thank you.
Mike, those are 79, 80, and 81. We have the report from the Human Services Department, beginning at 82 and running through page 88, 82 through 88. Anybody on Human Services? And then we have a resolution on page 89 in your packet from the Health and Human Services as well as the executive.
Chairman?
Supervisor Hamilton.
Come on here. Push the button. Oh, come on. Picking on me.
Page 86 at the top, just something I want to say on here. I think it's really cool. Every December, Human Services offers a Christmas program. And I don't have my glasses on, so I got to have longer arms. For families working on any division within our agency are able to submit a wish list. And from the generosity of volunteers in the community, they receive gift certificate, Christmas gifts for the children. I'm going to screw this name up, Jaborik. Thank you, Jarovic, was a solo project manager of this program, and she coordinated over 1,000 gifts for the children who live in Wood County as a result of they're able to have a Merry Christmas. I think that is very, very cool. All the negative stuff we do, I'm positive. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a nice point to share. All right, back to the resolution. Page 89.
This will be Resolution 18-2-9 to create one FTE Human Services Deputy Director position. Fiscal note, anticipated wages and benefits based upon a step 1 for pay grade 16 are wages and fringes totaling $111,273.10.
I have a motion by Fisher, and I have a second by Kramer. Discussion. Any discussion on the resolution? Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. Second resolution from Health and Human Services.
This will be Resolution 18-2-10 to authorize travel to Allendale Association, Lake Villa, Illinois. Fiscal note estimated at $300 per trip.
A motion by Hamilton and a second by Zurfluh. Any discussion on this resolution? Any discussion on this resolution? Please vote. And that resolution passed unanimously. Then we have a third resolution, and your revolution too, coming from Health and Human Services and the Judicial and Legislative.
This will be Resolution 18-2-11 to clarify and ratify a previous resolution of the County Board that provides additional treatment options for youth that otherwise would be limited to placement at Lincoln Hills or Copper Lake Juvenile Correction Centers. Fiscal note, anticipated cost savings as the cost of placement for youth needing services is significantly less at community-based treatment programs than it is at juvenile correction facilities.
Can I have a motion by Fisher and a second by Clendenning? Any discussion on this one? Supervisor Clendenning.
Will this help with the announcement that you just talked about with the Lincoln Hills and things? I know we've been doing this to get away from that cost, but can somebody elaborate a little more on it?
Well, I won't speak to the resolution itself, but in regard to what I mentioned this morning, yeah, this is directly related. We've had conversations at the WCA and with Speaker Voss's office on how we solve this problem. We know for a fact that Lincoln Hills is closing. That is going to happen. What are we going to do with those juveniles, and how do we do it in a more cost-effective way, and how do the counties not get stuck with the cost or any additional cost of paying for that? So this is directly, in some regards, related to that. Not necessarily the language of the resolution, but related to how we're going to house these people in regional facilities around the state, and then how we're going to handle the overflow. And then today they talked about how we're going to handle females within the system, because they account for a very small portion of that population, but nonetheless account for a significant number of people. So I'll go back to the resolution. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the resolution? Any discussion on the resolution? Please vote. Thank you. And we do have a full WCA conference call board meeting this afternoon that will support this legislation moving forward, and that will occur, I think it's 4:30, I can't remember right now, in respect to that.
May I just ask a question about that? We've talked a little bit about this in the Health and Human Services Committee, and I was just kind of wondering if you could give us any information on how decisions were going to be made about the facilities in the different regions in the state, whether there'll be input from human services directors, and can you just talk a little bit about that process?
That was part of the discussion with our counties association and the legislature this morning, is how those decisions were going to get made, and maybe not just made at the state level. And so a committee is going to be put together that's going to be comprised of legislators, people from the governor's office, people from counties that currently run a regional facility, and there's 3 of those right now, La Crosse, Eau Claire, and Racine. Representatives from counties that don't have a facility and would need to use one of those regional facilities, the counties association themselves, and then human services directors from counties that currently run one and counties that don't and would need to contract that. So I think from a county's perspective, we got everything in that legislation we could possibly hope for, maybe with the exception of the timeline, which is just aggressive, but you know, something that needs to get done, and hopefully we will have everything in place by that 2020 deadline.
Just a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume that there'll be some public hearings held on this so that the public can have some input into what is developed?
Well, location is yet to be determined. They know that a couple of those facilities will be located very close, either in Milwaukee County or very close, because that's where the majority of those offenders that we currently have housed reside. The additional regional facilities are yet to be determined where that will occur, and then, like I said, how costs will be allocated and taken care of. Right now, the legislation calls for the state funding 95% of the construction of a facility within a county. We are then concerned with operational costs. And another point, good point this morning is, what about the personal property inside of the facility once it's built, because those costs are considered. So the one thing we've looked at with the legislature is make sure that we are made whole in this, and at the end of the day, the cost is less than it currently is, and that we have better outcomes. So yeah, there will be a lot of discussion.
Thank you.
Any further questions there? Okay, are we at page 92 now? All right. 92 in your packet is the Conservation Education Economic Development Committee meeting of February 7th. Begins on 92, goes through 98. So I'll give you a minute to go through those. That's a considerable amount of pages, 92 through 98. Doesn't appear that any of you flagged anything there. The ITBEC board, beginning on 99 and running through 102. UW Extensions monthly report on 103, 4, 5, and 6. Report from Planning and Zoning beginning on 107 and running through 116. There's a number of additional pages of information in there along with that. When I get to page 117, I have the Wisconsin Legislative Council memo, and that's on 117, 18, 19, and 20. Supervisor Leitner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, you had your head down, and I had my hand up for page 112.
Back to 112.
No.
Thank you. I happened upon this seminar, this government services seminar, about 12:30 or so, and then I had, I was fortunate to be able to eat there. But the 8 o'clock session where Paul Lieb here talked, and I know the man, I would have very much liked to have seen that. And again, the 10:30 session where Patrick Heston and Zach and Hildy and there's somebody else that spoke. But the reason I'm addressing this right now is I probably missed the notification that this was going to occur. It was an all-day thing. And that's happened once or twice before. I'm wondering if we could be redundant and, for supervisors' benefit, place notice of an event like this that's in county, not only with the committee that sponsored it, but in some other format. I don't know how I missed it. I wanted to be there in the morning part of it.
No, that's appreciated. It's a great event. It's really not a county event, though. It's a chamber leadership event that they just happen to run within the courthouse because we have space to currently do that. I don't know that they would object to supervisors attending, but it isn't a county event. It's just one where we provide space. But I'm glad you found value in that, and I think, generally speaking, they had good speakers all the way till 2:30. So at that point in time, they had me. So anyway, any other questions or comments? All right, the Legislative Council Memo 117 again through 120. The Land and Water Conservation Department's monthly activity report beginning on 121 and running through 125. Minutes of the Judicial and Legislative Committee. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is a crazy day. First of all, I really do want to thank everybody for getting this one. It was extremely treacherous out there in some places. We have a primary election that's happening today, and those discussions are going on. And I've got a clerk sitting next to me, and we've taken a couple things in different order than we normally do, and I completely forgot about Shane, and we told him we'd give him 3 minutes today. We told him we'd give him 15 minutes. So, Shane, the floor is yours. I'm sorry about that.
Bill's iPad.
My apologies. We're doing so good. Mr. Ashcraft, certainly recognize you.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're waiting for him. If I would see the standoff, he's going to board there, or, their area groundwater. In recognition of the effort to take local groundwater, Northern area has named the 2017 groundwater guardian of the National Foundation. This Milder has successful one for the Milder groundwater, according to the program manager. Then on the bottom paragraph, it says, with the effort of the strong local teams that are 60 groundwater guardian teams are educate people groundwater in 23 states across the country. So that's what we're people doing up in Milder.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I should point out that this groundwater group has been in effect for a long time. Supervisor Ashbeck has been an essential part of that, and both of our county cons have been active in that group and contributed to it. So it's been county supported too.
Thank you. Shane, I didn't cut into your time.
That's fine. Good morning. I thank you guys for the opportunity to...
Microphone.
Yeah, why don't you take your mic if you want to walk.
I like the water ones. So.
Well, we have the microphone. We got to be able to...
Better?
Better.
Perfect. All right. So I was going to take this morning and somewhat briefly give you guys just an overview of some of the new initiatives we're working on in the county. Most of this stuff is kind of above and beyond our normal state-mandated programs. These are some new ventures we've been kind of ironing out the details over the last couple of years, and they're progressing along quite nicely. So I wanted to share them with you at the county board level. So the first is just a series of some pictures, just kind of showing some different things that we're playing around with and experimenting with. I guess one of our biggest initiatives that we've been working on is building partnerships and collaboration, trust, friendships, common goals with some of our partners and neighboring agencies, other ag-related organizations for common goals, solutions, not problems, a sense of accomplishment, and compromise and resolution. We've been really working strongly the last couple of years. Here's just a few of the organizations we've been partnering with, working with, and it's just been a wonderful ride. Things that I didn't think were going to happen 2 years ago are happening now. We're seeing these people come to the table and really input, and we're all sharing, common interests and common goals. So, sort of in the middle of this slide, I've got our land conservation mission, which really hasn't changed. And the cool thing about this is a lot of our partners are really kind of on the same theme of our overall mission. And I'm going to read that to you. To protect, improve, and manage land and water resources in Wood County through technical and financial assistance, educational opportunities, enforcement of county ordinances, and administration of state programs, permanently benefiting land and water resources to its citizens. I think that's our number one priority, obviously, is land and water resource issues. We do have a third time running event that's coming up next month. It's titled Healthy Soil, Healthy Water. This has been an effort to really push the understanding that in order to get cleaner water, we need to be looking at the activities on our landscape and changing some of our practices, whether it's no-tills and covers for the ag land, or different treatment methods for the municipalities, or just a whole spectrum. Work with septic systems in private residence. It's all important. And as you can see on the bottom of this sheet, our planning committee is a pretty well-diverse group of entities. This is pictures of, I think, the event in 2016, the first time we ran it. So over the last 2 years, we've had a couple of these so far. We've had over 230 participants, at least half of them being farmer producers, which is huge. We've never seen that historically. And our planning committee and sponsors basically donated over $5,500 towards these events, which was awesome. It helped pay for the facilities, the speakers, meals, accommodations. And in March of 2018, we're planning another one of these, and we received another $3,000 in donations from our partners. This year's event is going to be held up in Marshfield. This flyer will be going online this week. As you can see, it still says draft. It's simply because we're still tweaking some of the fine details, but it will be at the University of Wood in Marshfield. It's a fantastic venue, and it'll really suit the needs of what we're trying to do with this workshop. It's a very regional approach, so we're inviting people from all over the central Wisconsin region. This shouldn't be too unfamiliar to you guys. In early 2017, I brought to you my concerns with a nasty plant that resides in our county. It also resides in our neighboring county. And I gave presentations to you guys, and we ended up declaring this bad boy a noxious weed in Wood County and also in Portage County. I'm not going to say a lot on this other than the fact that we're really prepared on this thing now. We have mapped all the sites that we're aware of, and we have a kind of a protocol in place now with the county board, the county highway department, and some of the town boards, where in the spring, before the stuff starts growing, we're going to start getting maps out to these individuals and information about how to treat these things, and the protocol to follow. So I feel like we're ahead of the game going into this growing season, and time to start going after this bad boy. This is a new program I haven't really rolled out a lot of details on yet, but I just wanted to mention. My department is considering a no-till drill program. There's been other counties that have done this, where they actually purchase a no-till drill and develop a lease program for their county farmers, producers, residents to rent for planting prairies, for pollinator species, for row crops, and for cover crops. So I will probably give you more information on this as it rolls out. Most of you have probably heard of the Farmers of Mill Creek Watershed Council. That is a group that we formed in 2016 with the help of DADCAP funds. We were able to secure a $20,000 grant. We formed the group. It's a nonprofit organization. Basically, the $20,000 grant was to write a proposal as to where we were going to make some water quality changes and initiatives, and hit the boots, hit the ground running. It was a conglomeration of Extension, Wood, and Portage counties because we share that watershed. These are some of their goals: to educate themselves and their neighbors on phosphorus best management practices with the goal of improving water quality in Mill Creek. Focus on adopting more environmentally friendly practices to ensure clean water and healthy soils for future generations. And the ultimate goal of the farmer group was to be stewards of environmentally sustainable for our land and water in our watershed. I'm going to share a few pictures here. This would be a cover crop planted into soybean stubble with a no-till drill. Low disturbance, basically no tillage used here. Very, very minimal disturbance. This is the Mill Creek watershed. If you can see there, oops, gotta find my, here's the county line, and the job is over here. So the watershed's about half in Wood County and about half in Portage County. Now this is a watershed that we share. There's a boundary line, but for all intents and purposes, we're working at this as one unit, one project. It's 47 miles long, 165 square miles, 105,600 acres. And this little map up in the corner shows the entire Wisconsin River Basin, but this little sliver here is the Mill Creek. Just give you a quick view of a cover crop. The soybeans no-tilled into a cover crop on the left-hand side in June, and them same soybeans growing in July. Several field days. Over the last 2 years, we've had probably 6 or 8 field days with different demonstrations. Here is a picture of a rain simulator with different soil conditions, normally tilled soils, no-tilled soils. And what happens is the rain runs off and runs into these bottles, and it's just a clear visual of what the water looks like. Soil and sediment, phosphorus going with it versus clean water filtering through healthy soils. This is a picture of a demonstration we did last summer. This is what they call a low disturbance manure injection piece of equipment, a toolbar. And as you can see, this is a picture of a no-till, low disturbance injection going on in a live growing cover crop. This is not normally an option for farmers. It's a huge opportunity for farmers to be able to spread manure during a growing season when they normally wouldn't be able to do that. Normally they got spring conditions, fall conditions, a very small window of time to do this. This just opens the door to all kinds of opportunities. Downfall, it's expensive equipment. Not everybody's gonna buy it, but as it becomes more and more available, more and more people become aware of it. It's definitely the way of the future. Here's a picture of that same unit injecting about 14,000 gallons of manure to the acre in a live standing corn crop. You can see in a few of these pictures, here's where it went through. Here's with it actively going through. You can see extremely minimal disturbance. You see no pooling of manure on the surface. You see the drag line hose, it knocks these corn plants over, but they pop right back up. Now, it's kind of critical when you do this, it's got to be a certain stage height on the corn, but very effective.
So Shane, during Farm Tech Days next year, will they be?
They will be there, they'll have a booth. This particular equipment was on loan for us from Bazooka Farm Star. They will be at the Technology Days, they will have a booth. Look for them. They got some really interesting technology there. Again, here's just taking a sweep. On the right is where they took a sweep already and they're coming back. And I just got a 1 minute little clip. Why is that not working? It's just an actual video. It takes about a minute of the equipment actually pulling the toolbar. Again, not damaging the crop. Injecting 14 to 18,000 pounds of manure into the ground, covering it back up. About the most environmentally friendly type of application you could imagine.
When you say it's not cheap, what are you talking about?
The actual equipment is not cheap.
Like thousands of dollars?
Oh yeah, we're probably talking 100K, but in reality there's a lot of guys out there right now that are using injection equipment. It's on the same lines, only it's not like the no-till version. It's actually, they inject it, they come to a corner, they pick up, they turn, they're spilling a whole bunch on the corners. You see a field that's been injected, there's going to be a lot of manure on the surface. This puts it in the ground, covers it right up, and it's just, it's ideal. Here is a picture of a phantom injector, which we just saw, going over a sprayed hay field. This is a field that was terminated, and then they went into it with this equipment. You can see some lines in the background, but that's the extent of it. Bob?
Well, at the same time, when they inject it in the ground, you don't get all that stuff going into the air. You don't even know everybody else there.
Exactly. There's minimal losses as far as nitrogen into the air and ammonias, and I mean, pretty much what you're putting in the ground stays in the ground. Here's just another picture of a smaller unit, maybe a little more practical for your typical dairy farmer, that can be mounted right on the back of a liquid tanker. Much smaller scale, more affordable. For guys that are hauling their own manure, this is probably going to be more of an option. Just quickly, 2017 accomplishments for the group. This is just 2017. We've been doing this a couple of years. 500 acres of no-till, 400 acres of single species covers, 120 acres of multi-species covers, a 12-acre variety demo plot. 4 locations we had research plots, we hosted 3 educational field days, and we published the first edition of the Farmers of Mill Creek Watershed newsletter. This is another project we're working on. This has been something that's been in the works for a couple of years. Some of you may have heard this terminology, TMDL, stands for Total Maximum Daily Load. This is a requirement by the EPA for the state of Wisconsin to look at each one of its impaired waterways in the state of Wisconsin and do a study on it. Now this study goes back a few years. What we're talking about in our region is the Wisconsin River Basin and the Water Quality Improvement Project. This is a schematic that kind of shows how the Wisconsin breaks out. It's a series of a whole bunch of reservoirs and dams, and so there's a lot of different things you have to look at. You have to look at the water quality in these reservoirs. You have to look at base flow. You have to look at, are there point sources going in? Is it non-point? It's just a very complicated system. Obviously, this is what we want, is good water quality for recreation, tourism, everything else. This is what we don't want. As you can see, the toxic algae blooms that become pretty relevant in the summer are definitely impact our economy, our tourism. The one on the right here shows, what I think jumps ahead. The clean water and fish and wildlife recreation, that's what we want to see. The phosphorus and toxic algae blooms and public health risks is what we don't want to see. So what we need to do is kind of get to that right-hand side. This just kind of gives a quick illustration of a TMDL, total maximum daily load. On the right, you got the waste load allocation. That's your municipal wastewater, industrial wastewater, permitted stormwater, sewers, CAFO areas. You got a natural background, which comes from your forests and wetlands. That's your legacy phosphorus stuff. And then you got the load allocation come from ag. So if you got load allocation, waste load, and a margin of safety, the maximum load creates what we call a non-impaired waterway. So you got your baseline pollutant load, your total maximum daily load that DNR and EPA will set in order to achieve this right here, meeting water quality standards. Here's a quick statewide phosphorus criteria, and this is in terms of micrograms per liter, but this would tell you rivers to be at a safe, non-impaired state, 100 micrograms per liter, streams 75, reservoirs 40 and 30, inland lakes even lower, the Great Lakes, look how small these numbers are. So those are the kind of implementation goals we'll need to meet in order to basically have clean water. Here's just a snapshot quickly. I know I talk about the Mill Creek a lot, but the reason I do is because this is probably one of the highest delivery streams we currently have in Wood County. It's the most impaired, and that's why we're focusing a lot of our work on that right now. Right here is what we classify as healthy for streams. Remember, I just showed you the slide at 75 micrograms per liter. We're seeing discharges of 175 coming out of the Mill Creek into the mainstream of Wisconsin. Here's another, just kind of gives you an overview of all of the tributaries coming into the Wisconsin. Mill being right here, but here's the levels. In the blue would be within the state standards, in the green is beyond. So some of your big ones, the Big Oak Plain, Fenwood, Little Oak Plain, Mill, Yellow, Lemon, as you can see, they're more than double, if not triple, where state statutes or state standards would like them to be. This is just a quick schematic on timeline. Zip forward, we're all the way over here. Oh, this thing don't like me. We're all the way over here already. We're in 2018. The TMDL implementation is going on. Within the week, they will be publicly announcing the TMDL loads, which everybody's been waiting for. That is happening. We're basically moving into the implementation stages statewide. Industrial wastewater, municipal versus rural and ag. It's kind of everybody's a part of the solution. I just threw this in there because it's really important to see that, why does this matter? This illustration shows, 2,400 tons of sediment, how much came or was recorded in 2010 and 2012, and in reality, to build an inch of soil, it can take 500 to 1,000 years. And we can lose that inch of soil in 1 to 5 years if not managed properly. Okay, this is another venture we're moving into. I'm talking a lot about the Mill Creek. In order to secure funding, and we've been trying to get priority watershed funding for that watershed for years, probably close to 20 years. We applied for and got accepted to receive a $22,000 grant to write a 9 key element watershed plan. So we partnered with Wood and Portage counties to do that because we share that watershed. We also submitted and received another partnership grant to write another 9-key plan for the 14-mile watershed. And that is between Wood, Adams, Washare, and Portage counties. So got a lot of stuff going on. The Mill Creek plan, we're taking the lead on for Wood County. We're drafting the plan in our office. The 14-mile, Adams County is taking the lead, and I mean, we're supporting them with all our data and implementation, but they're going to take the lead on writing the plan. Again, another picture of the Mill Creek. This is just the cover page of the plan I started drafting. What's interesting about this is you can see this is the entire Mill Creek, which is a Huck 10 watershed, and we broke it down into a Huck 10 watershed, and I broke it down into 4 segments. And we'll be analyzing those segments individually to see which ones are higher deliveries, which ones are lower, where we should focus our efforts to best get the bang for the buck and get the best water quality improvements. This is the 14-mile. Don't have a lot of detail to give you on it, just want to share a photo of what it looks like. And again, this is a Huck 10 broken into 4 Huck 12s. The main 9 key elements that I have to meet in a plan, off on the right, I'm just going to quickly summarize them. To identify causes and sources, estimate pollutant loading into the watershed and expected load reductions, describe management measures that will achieve load reductions to targeted critical areas, estimate the amount of technical and financial assistance relevant to authorities needed to implement the plan, develop an information and education component, develop a project schedule, develop interim measurable milestones, identify indicators to measure progress and make adjustments, and develop a monitoring component. Sounds like a lot. It is. It's about 3 steps further than we take our current land and water resource management plan. So we're integrating some new process into that. This is just a quick snapshot of all the TMDL, approved TMDL funded 9 key plans in the state. Ours obviously doesn't show up here in Wood County because it's not approved yet, but there are definitely a substantial number. The last thing I kind of wanted to talk about quickly is another opportunity that we have, and that is the statewide phosphorus multi-discharger variance. What this is it really takes into consideration the point source people, meaning your municipal wastewater treatment people, your industrial wastewater, your paper mills, all of these that dump into the Wisconsin River. It gives them an opportunity to slow down the permit process and take the time to get to the new limit that's set for them in incremental steps. And by doing that, they agree to pony up $50 a pound of phosphorus to go to the state, and then the state potentially disperses this money to approved counties that apply for the funds. We have applied for funds, so as early as 2018, we may be looking close to $80,000 that we could be receiving to start some of the work I'm talking about beyond the TMDL and the 9 key element plan I'm writing. This represents the Castle Rock section of the watershed. This is like part of the Wisconsin. It's a Huck 8, so it's about 4 times the size of the Mill Creek in general. So it doesn't cover parts of the Old Plain and the Yellow River and some of the other ones. But this is where we would have the ability to spend some of them funds within that region. I'm not going to get into this in detail, but I kind of just summarized. We applied for the funds for Mill Creek and 14 Mile. We'll be able to use these funds, so a good thing. And that's a wrap. Appreciate your time. If you got some questions.
Questions? Brad? Supervisor Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's fine. I'm just Brad. Great presentation. I see a picture of Ray Archuleta. Is he coming back to your conference? I don't think people, for those of you that don't know Ray, he is a pretty renowned soil person. That actually his nickname is the soil guy. I've heard him talk to him many times. Has he been at your conference, or is he coming, or is that just kind of up there as a...
He was actually at our very first conference. Would absolutely love to get him back. He is a retired NRCS guy. Right there he is. Right there's the soil guy.
Soils guy.
Labeled the soils guy. Unbelievable speaker. Is a real motivational person. Is just the leading expert in healthy soil health, healthy practices, no tilling, and the value of that. Had him at our first conference. He retired. He does this privately now, so his fees to get him are pretty substantial. He just did a conference down in Sauk County on February 7th. We considered having him. He was booked. We got another guy that we feel is pretty comparable to what he does, same kind of program. He's within Wisconsin. But I think we'll try and get him back again because he's just, he just captivates you. It's just incredible.
He is that good. I agree with that. And he's farmer. He's a farmer. So he's coming from within the community. The only other thing I wanted to point out, and I know not to take up a lot of the board meeting, but I do know that this issue is so complex, and I just wanted to point out that phosphorus, as you know, and maybe some people don't, it's not really a leachable nutrient. It doesn't move in soil very well. When you see these phospholoads coming into these lakes, into these streams, it is not maybe what you would think with nitrogen. It's not a leachable thing. It's physically being removed from with the soil. So when you talk about erosion, that is how the phosphorus is leaving the farm or somehow in a municipality. So it's not, there's two different parts of nutrients leaving, and I just wanted to point that out, that it is, when we look at, for example, the down by the town of Rome, and the one Southwood groundwater meeting I went to, Southeastwood County groundwater meeting, they were talking about how the water going into the lakes was quite well, but the water leaving the lakes was quite a concern. And when you look at that, that wasn't a source, that was a municipality source. So that kind of opens the door to understand it is a community problem, not an ag problem. And I know this discussion will go on for hours and hours, but phosphorus in its whole is not a leachable thing. So just wanted to point that out.
It's a great discussion point, and is this thing still on?
He's bringing that up, Hildy.
First of all, thanks, Shane. I know it went down a little longer than we expected, but I hope that the county is seeing that there is a very detailed program and a lot of programs that are working on the water issues and healthy conditions in general in Wood County. In the past, there's been a lot of negatives, but there's a heck of a lot of stuff going on within our conservation department. And all of you were part of making that possible by authorizing another person for that department. In the future, they may need more people, but from some of those grants that we're talking about, we may find funding to supplement the personnel and get even more programs going. It takes a long time to get things done in conservation. This isn't just turning off the tap of things. You have to work at it, and you have to have patience, and the conservation department's doing that.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor LaFontaine.
Just push it to its screen.
Questions I have is the relative difference in your TMDL between the Northwood County area with the heavy soils versus the Central Sands area. When you talk about Mill Creek area, are they making the differences between the areas in the soils?
That's a great point, and I'll talk on that if you allow me here. This illustrates it pretty well. If you look at the west side of the river, it's primarily your heavier soils, okay? And if you look at the discharge rates of phosphorus, they're significantly higher. Why is that? Heavy soils, those heavy soils move and they're carrying phosphorus. If you look at the east side of the river, look at the numbers. Most of them are all in the non-impaired waters category. Why is that? Sandier soils. It's not so much a phosphorus issue as now it becomes a nitrogen leaching issue in the groundwater. So when you reference to northern Wood County versus southern Wood County, two different deals. I mean, you got northern county, you got phosphorus issues, which is surface water runoff. In the southern part of the county, you got nitrification and movement and leaching of nitrates through soils to groundwater. It's a surface water issue versus a groundwater issue. Both are interconnected completely. One serves the other. It's one big ecosystem, but reality is we're dealing with nitrogen down in the south. Now, through the 14-mile watershed, that proposal is probably the main focus is going to be on nitrogen research and nitrogen reduction versus phosphorus. This is the first time in the state this has been attempted. And we're going to be kind of cutting edge on that watershed. So, thank you.
Supervisor Kramer. Just one quick point to that, Shane. I know the state corn and soybean groups are working on this. They at a recent conference just a few weeks ago, the nitrogen reduction to grow a crop. Everybody in the ag world used to always think 1 unit of N equals 1 bushel of corn. So if you want a 200 bushel of corn, you put 200 bushels of N out. And that has been kind of the standard for years. Some research has shown in Wisconsin, we are very, very fortunate to have absolutely the best research team in the nation. Our, Sean Connolly and the rest of that group speak nationally. They are now starting to look at 0.69 units of nitrogen for 1 bushel of corn, and they're showing that there really isn't any more, that the return on the investment and the over-application of nitrogen is really economically impacting farms. So that kind of research is going on at the state level, and it's just coming out. It just came out like in the last few weeks. So those things are, with our extension system and our research system, we start to see more of that, and that's the education process of the farmers, not only economically, but conservationally. So.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we go to the Judicial and Legislative Committee meeting of January 16th on page 126 and 127. 126 and 127. There are minutes from February 2nd, beginning on 128, 129, 30, and 31, and then you have the draft AB 881 on 132 and 133. Any questions there? Monthly report from Child Support, 134. Corp Council's monthly update, beginning on 135 and running through 142. That's his report, as well as some notice of injury and claim. Any questions there? Page 143, another memo from Corp Council Kassenholz, 143 to 147. Getting his pages in this packet, isn't it? For office. Then we go to the minutes of the Highway Infrastructure Recreation Committee. There are minutes from Thursday, February 1st on 148, 49, 50, and 51. The Parks Construction Supervisors Report, beginning all those reports from Highway and Parks, beginning on 152 through 155. Aging Disability Resource Center, their Finance Committee minutes of December 14th on 156. Their board meeting minutes of December 14th on 157 and 8. Central Wisconsin State Fair Board of Directors minutes from December on 159 and 160. McMillan Memorial Library Board of Trustees from December 20th on 161 and 162. Supervisor Clendenning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'll notice in a minute, I made a suggestion that maybe a presentation to this county board on our solar system. It's kind of #1 in the state, and I'd like to know if that's possible.
Anything's possible. Yeah, give me some details. We'll need to make this happen.
Thank you.
You mean our solar system's the best in the, or the display?
The board.
The board, it's the library board he's talking about.
I haven't seen the sun in a long time. I was a little concerned.
Yes, the whole book.
The Bill and Memorial Library Board of Trustees from January 17th on 163, 164. South Central Library System, 165, and 166. Minutes of the University Commission meeting of November 15th on 167 and 8. Department head meeting minutes on 169 and 170. Takes me to the end of the packet. Anything else that needs to come before this board today? No, shaking the head. It is, like I said, it is election day. Make sure y'all get to the polls. Anybody here out in the public, be careful driving. Supervisor Rosa, did you have something?
No, I just said go vote, everybody.
Okay. All right, motion to adjourn. Do you have something first, Supervisor Zerfeld?
I just checked with our fearless leader for the ad hoc committee for property. Will be in room 114, commencing at 11:30.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, back to the motion to adjourn. I have Hamilton's hand up first and Fisher second. All in favor, please signify by aye.